Good afternoon, dear viewers. Ruslan Baylov here, and today I've prepared some important and interesting news for you. Before you begin, I sincerely ask you to subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments what city you're watching from. Well then, today was an eventful day over Kyiv. A massive wave of incoming strikes hit the capital and its infrastructure. The left bank of the city went completely dark. No electricity, no running water, no communication. On the right bank, at first there were only fluctuations, but within hours, entire districts followed the same fate. The capital was left in a total blackout. And remember, Zelensky once promised to plunge Moscow into darkness. It seems his own prophecy turned against him. Meanwhile, the battles on the front lines continue, and as always, we'll analyze the latest developments together. Let's open the map. Good news keeps arriving from the front. The Vostok grouping made a decisive push forward. More than 4 kilometers of territory were taken in just one breakthrough. Units of the center grouping successfully counterattacked near the Dobropilya salient, regaining ground previously lost to Ukrainian forces. At the same time, the west grouping keeps tightening the noose around Kupiansk, denying any escape to the encircled enemy. Let's start precisely with Kupiansk, the key hotspot of today. Take a look at the map. See that narrow corridor that used to serve as an escape route for Ukrainian troops? It's almost gone. The so-called bottleneck has shrunk to the point where it's practically impossible to pass through. Even small arms can cover this stretch with ease. That means the Ukrainian garrison inside the city is now firmly sealed off. Russian assault units advanced along Sadovaya Street, clearing residential blocks one by one. Progress was also made downtown. Both remaining railway stations, Kupiansk, Yuzhny, and Estakadnaya, were taken under control. The bus terminal has also been secured. Though few fresh videos are emerging from Kupiansk, the situation is clear. Russian forces now control the area east of the central market all the way to the Oskol River. Around the Estakadnaya station, troops crossed the tracks, forced the Kupianka River, and occupied a complex of buildings near the picnic store. And then came something unexpected. Reports that Ukrainian soldiers trapped inside began surrendering in small groups, waving white flags. Several hundred remain encircled there, but the moment for an organized breakout has long passed. Now they face only two choices: surrender or sit surrounded and wait for the next storming wave. The most important success in Kupiansk, however, was the entry into the Yubileyny district, the last Ukrainian stronghold made up of high-rise buildings. Everything beyond it is private housing and open terrain. Russian troops didn't just wedge into a single building, they took control of the entire block, including school number 4, which the enemy had turned into a fortified position. Out of 21 high-rises, 9 are now firmly under Russian control. That's significant progress. The irony is that a month ago, the Ukrainian command transferred an entire brigade here to stabilize the front and push Russian units out of the city. The outcome speaks for itself. Kupiansk is effectively lost for Kiev. But that's not the only blow for the Ukrainian side. Let's move on to the Vostok group, which pushed forward several kilometers on its sector. Yet before we get to their advance, let's look briefly at the area held by the center grouping, the Dobropilya salient. There, in the embattled village of Vladimirovka, our Marines executed a bold maneuver. Some time ago, Ukrainian forces managed to counterattack and reclaim the village after losing it earlier in August. But now, Russian Marines stormed back in on armored vehicles and retook their former positions. According to soldiers on the ground, they didn't just recover part of the area, they recaptured the whole settlement. What does that mean strategically? First, the entire pocket around Vladimirovka can now be cleared, erasing the gains the Ukrainian army had made. From there, Russian forces will push north toward Shakov. Considering that our western flank is already inside the village and fighting is underway there, advancing from the south would create a classic pincer. An attack from two sides at once. It's unlikely the Ukrainian garrison could withstand such pressure. And that's key, because Shakov is the linchpin of the entire Dobropilya salient. Once Shakov and nearby Sofiivka fall, the front line stabilizes completely, and no more counterattacks will threaten Russian positions. Along with the progress in Vladimirovka, troops also cleared the area east of Zoloty Kolodets. advancing almost 3 kilometers. Thanks to this, the settlement of Kucherov Yar, which had been semi-encircled for some time, is now much safer. Enemy lines are pushed back by over 2 kilometers in every direction. In general, over the past 2 weeks, the initiative in this sector belongs entirely to Russia. The center grouping no longer sits in defense. It attacks. And, as we've seen repeatedly, it does so successfully. Now back to the Vostok grouping, whose troops also demonstrated remarkable results. Supported by artillery and UAV reconnaissance, they broke through Ukrainian positions and pushed the line forward several kilometers deep. Their advance wasn't random. It was coordinated, deliberate, and executed with precision. Russian forces continue to consolidate gains, systematically cutting off supply routes and surrounding isolated Ukrainian pockets. Every captured elevation, every destroyed bridge brings them closer to a full operational encirclement. Across all directions, one thing is clear: the initiative has shifted. Ukrainian forces, despite reinforcements, can no longer regain control. The pattern is the same everywhere. Russian attacks start with drone surveillance, followed by precision artillery, then swift ground maneuvers that leave no room for retreat. What once looked like a static front is now turning into a rolling wave, pressing deeper into Ukrainian lines. So let's sum up. Kiev in darkness, power plants offline, critical infrastructure disabled. On the front lines, decisive breakthroughs. In Kupiansk, Vladimirovka, and along the Dobropilya salient. Ukrainian forces surrounded, surrendering, losing ground they fought months to capture. Zelensky once vowed to bring darkness to Moscow. Instead, it's his own capital, now plunged into night. And while officials in Kiev scramble to reassure the public, the reality on the map speaks for itself. The front is collapsing, and Russia holds the initiative. The coming days will show whether Ukrainian command can mount any meaningful resistance, or whether this wave of coordinated strikes marks the start of a broader collapse across the entire Eastern Front. Tell me what you think. Is this the turning point of the campaign, or just the prelude to something even bigger? Take a look at this. An impressive leap forward. The distance our troops covered to reach the village of Alexeyevka is more than 4 kilometers. But the real story here isn't just about taking another settlement in the Dnipropetrovsk region, even though that alone is an achievement. What truly matters are the prospects this breakthrough opens. And they are as promising for Russia as they are alarming for Kiev. If our forces hold Alexeyevka, they'll gain direct access to Volchye and the main crossroads beyond it. From there, they can advance either toward Aristopol, toward Kolomytsi, or even both simultaneously. In any of these scenarios, the Ukrainian army would lose a massive pocket of territory, roughly 40 square kilometers, and, more importantly, their garrison in Velikomikhaylivka would be cut off from the south. The village would be completely encircled. The noose tightens, and there's no easy way out. Meanwhile, progress is also visible on the axis from Verbov toward Vyshnev. It's not yet marked on the maps, but assault groups have already appeared on the outskirts. The battles for the village haven't begun in full. For now, aviation dominates the field. Heavy aerial bombs strike Ukrainian positions almost daily, flattening fortified lines before the infantry moves in. It's confirmed that a few civilians still remain in Vyshnev. Their situation is difficult, and they face two options: attempt to flee to nearby settlements, or take shelter in basements and wait until our troops secure the area. But as we know, even neighboring villages are temporary havens at best. Once Vyshnev falls, our troops will inevitably reach those places too. We've already discussed why Vyshnev is strategically vital. Once it's under control, it will allow Russian forces to establish full fire dominance over the Pokrovsk-Huliaipol highway. Even now, our fiber-linked drones are hitting Ukrainian transport convoys along this very road from a distance. But once Russian units reach the western edge of Vyshnev, that entire stretch will effectively become a kill zone. This won't completely cut off Ukrainian logistics in Huliaipol, but it will severely restrict them. Overall, the Vostok grouping continues to advance like an unstoppable steamroller. The Ukrainian army has no effective response left. Now let's take a wider look at the Dnipropetrovsk direction. Russian forces are pressing hard to break through Ukrainian defenses around Poltavka, striking from two sides simultaneously. Heavy battles rage near Okhotnichye and Uspanovka, while Russian units expand their control near Novohrihorivka. The fighting for Alexeyevka continues, alongside clashes for Ivanivka. According to Kyiv's own analysts, Russia has transferred 4 motorized rifle brigades from the Pokrovsk region to strengthen the Dnipropetrovsk front. They report that the 35th, 55th, 74th, and 137th Brigades of the Center grouping have moved closer to Novopavlivka. Previously, these units were stationed south of Pokrovsk. If these reports are true, then what's unfolding in Dnipropetrovsk is nothing short of a silent disaster for Kiev. Russian troops are methodically advancing, while the Ukrainian leadership pretends nothing is happening. Combat-ready units have been redeployed elsewhere under Syrsky's orders, leaving local defense lines manned by poorly trained reservists with no reserves, no fortified shelters, and no reliable support. On the Pokrovsky axis, Russian troops have begun storming the settlement of Molodetske. On the Zaporizhzhia front, assaults continue near Primorsky and Stepnohirsk. Ukrainian troops rarely counterattack, relying instead on artillery and drones, even striking deep into Russian rear areas. Positional battles persist near Mala Tokmachka. At the same time, in the regions of Chernihiv, Sumy, Kharkiv, Dnipropetrovsk, and Zaporizhzhia, civilians are warned to prepare for extended blackouts, potentially lasting most of the day or even several days in a row. These are the areas where energy infrastructure has been hit the hardest. One of the recent missile and drone strikes targeted the port of Ilychivsk. According to preliminary information, the target was a shipment of military cargo recently delivered from Turkey. A massive fire broke out, followed by a series of secondary explosions. The port city was left without power. In Sloviansk, a high-voltage insulator factory was destroyed. Amid all this, unexpected news emerged from the political front. Reports from the Kremlin confirmed that Putin and Trump, during their meeting in Alaska, reached a set of understandings that still remain in force. Though, as officials noted, not everyone is happy about that. Presidential aide Yuri Ushakov said that communication between representatives of both administrations continues. He emphasized that claims about the Alaska momentum being exhausted are false. Those agreements, according to him, irritate both Europeans and Kyiv, precisely because they don't want peace. Deputy Foreign Minister Ryabkov commented yesterday that the diplomatic impulse generated by that Alaska meeting has weakened, particularly after Trump began discussing the possible transfer of Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. Sources in Kyiv claim that Zelensky is growing increasingly frustrated with European partners who are stalling financial support for Ukraine. Behind closed doors, he reportedly complains that securing each new loan has become far more difficult. In the past, after every international summit, Kyiv could expect $500 million or even more in aid. Now, he says, even 100 or 200 million is considered a success, and most of the time he receives nothing but promises. Analysts point out that each new year of war costs Ukraine between 10 and 30% more than the previous one. And according to Politico, Zelensky has allegedly set strange conditions for Trump, suggesting that if the former US president transfers Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine, Kyiv would nominate him for the Nobel Peace Prize. Yes, peace through missiles, irony at its finest. Another report notes that this nomination would only happen if a ceasefire were achieved. During his September meeting with Trump, Zelensky did not receive a direct answer on missile deliveries. "I didn't hear a no," he later told journalists. "I only heard that the issue would be studied further at the technical level." Meanwhile, in Europe, the rhetoric is becoming more reckless. The European Parliament has passed what it proudly calls a strong resolution against Russia. It calls on EU members to be ready to intercept, even shoot down, Russian aircraft entering European airspace, and to use frozen Russian assets as a financial base for new loans to Ukraine. It also urges harmonized sanctions against Russia, Belarus, Iran, and North Korea. The resolution strongly condemns Moscow for alleged airspace violations over Poland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Romania, and for supposed drone incursions targeting infrastructure in Denmark, Sweden, and Norway. It encourages EU states to take coordinated, proportionate measures against all such threats. But not everyone in Europe agrees. Alice Weidel, co-chair of Germany's Alternative for Deutschland party, responded sharply, "If Friedrich Merz wants war so badly, let him go fight it himself. Let him enlist in the Ukrainian army. Let the vice-chancellor or the SPD faction leaders join him. If they're so eager for war, let them show what they can do on the battlefield." Her words hit a nerve, and not without reason. AfD has now surged to the top of nationwide polls in Germany. The mood in Europe is shifting fast. Further east, Moldova faces its own reckoning. After the elections, the country is bracing for a political and economic crisis. Disillusionment with European integration is spreading rapidly. And across the ocean, Bloomberg publishes another ominous headline: China joins Russia's secret war against Europe. Columnist Hal Brands claims that Europe, once the symbol of post-war peace, now faces an era of prolonged conflict and instability. He writes that after Putin and Trump's August talks, Russia intensified both its military pressure on Ukraine and its hybrid warfare against Europe through sabotage, election interference, and cyber attacks. According to this version, Moscow seeks to punish Europe for supporting Kiev and to break Western unity, betting that a distracted Washington won't intervene. The article concludes that both Russia and China aim to weaken Europe, though Beijing prefers to do it through cyber operations and economic influence. Whether Washington will step up to defend Europe remains, as the author says, an open question. Such alarmist rhetoric serves one purpose: to cover up Western failures with fear. Macron, meanwhile, is reportedly looking for one last chance at negotiations, not to end the war, but to save his own government. And that brings this report to a close. Stay tuned, friends. Support the channel, share the video, and subscribe. Your attention helps keep this work going. Until next time, stay safe and stay informed.